Hello.
Hi, Linz. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Apologies, I couldn't find my headphones, so I hope I'm coming through okay.
Yeah, it sounding good. I mean, yeah, I think you're close enough, so I can hear you pretty loud and clear.
Brilliant.
But yeah, nice to have you on. Thanks for joining us. I'll just say hi to everyone watching and watching back as well. I'm Linz. I'm part of the Launchpad team, and we have been doing artist conversations and music industry expert conversations about how to support artists. And today we're going to talk to Kwame from PRS Foundation about PPL Momentum Accelerator Fund, which is really exciting. So I don't know if you just want to say who you are and what your role is and that sort of thing.
Cool. My name is Kwame. I'm the new Grants and Programs Manager for Industry Funds at PRS Foundation. And I basically oversee three funds at the foundation. I oversee International Showcase Funds, Momentum, and Hitmaker.
Amazing. So loads of stuff going on.
Yep, yeah, loads of stuff.
And quite
Inundated.
quite a few announcements and funds opening and deadlines and things going on at the moment.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, really exciting. So yeah, we're going to focus on one of the funds today, which is a PPL Momentum Accelerator Fund, which Launchpad is a partner of.
Mhm.
So it'd be really great if you could just tell us what it is.
So PPL Momentum has been going now for about 8 years, and within that time, I guess we began to notice that not everyone up and down the length of breadth of the UK was benefiting from the same sort of energy from the fund and the different kind of nuances that happen within music regionally and across other barriers. So I guess from that there was a natural kind of transition into something which was a bit more regional centric. And about a year or so ago, Launchpad and PRS and PPO have come together to kind of create what's called Momentum Accelerator. And I guess in a nutshell, it's identifying within musicians specific to the Yorkshire region how funding of this kind can facilitate their trajectory in music.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. And so there's not been many rounds of this so far. It's quite a new thing, which is again really exciting to see that there's more funds available and support for artists, which is great. Can you maybe tell us like how much you can get and what you can use it for?
Sure. So currently the funding for Momentum Accelerator is up to £5,000, and that funding can be there's some guidance on the website as to what the kind of the aspects of your musical plan that funding can be designated for. It's eligible, like I said before, for specific to musicians within the Yorkshire region, but also it's at that stage in their career which I guess would push them into a position maybe they would be relevant for the fund, which is called PPL Momentum, which is separate from Momentum Accelerator. PPL Momentum exists on a UK wide scale.
Yeah. And that's a larger fund, is that right?
Yeah. So that's a
Yeah.
larger fund. So the PPL Momentum Fund is between 5 to 15,000.
Right. Okay. So this is one of a number of funds that is up to £5,000, and like you explained there, it's specific to Yorkshire artists and bands, as opposed to the rest of the UK, to help kind of ring fence for those specific types of artists.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be able to maybe tell us a bit more about kind of who it's for in terms of what sort of stage an artist or band might be at when they're applying? So, because we have obviously lots of different stages of artists, and Launchpad supports very emerging artists, very pre-Momentum Accelerator and pre-Momentum. So perhaps if you could try and help us figure out or let us know a little bit more about where an artist might be at when
Yes.
they're ready to apply for this, that would be
Yeah,
great.
definitely. So it's quite an interesting question, which I get asked quite a bit, even coming into this new position, as to when does an artist know when they are ready for these funds. And it's it's not a cop out in any way, but it's a very personal question. I guess you have to understand what you identify as your tipping point. You've hit the significant anchor points in your music career, which you feel would kind of it does need that extra capital to kind of push you into the space of even more visibility and more awareness. We kind of identify that as having a growing regional fan base. You can evidence that there's a plan of sorts. You're on the way to kind of integrate in some sort of management or agent into your musical career plan, and I guess the funding is facilitating all of that coming together. But I guess it's the process of hitting these points consecutively within your career. I guess only an artist would identify that within their specific genre of music as to what that looks like. Is it a showcase event? Is it a live headline live event? Is it notable kind of playlists on your radio station? That specific artist would identify those anchor points and go in for that level of funding. But it is quite a personal understanding. But from our perspective, we help that understanding that situation by having relevant assessors who have a good regional awareness of the different genres within the music scenes in and around the Yorkshire area, and that helps us kind of manage the kind of the expectations of the applicants as well.
Yeah, that's great. It does feel like with all funding, it's quite hard to define that, like where you should be at, and it's not to put people off applying at all, is it? It's more like what we're trying to do with these conversations, generally speaking, with our talking about other funds that we've been looking at and helping people with. It is about that kind of like recognizing where you're at as an artist and looking at why it's right for you. So obviously, part of this is a conversation hopefully will help that, but also looking on our Launchpad music website, we've got a page dedicated specifically to this fund, and of course your website as well, so we can come on to sort of contacts and things a bit later. I guess some other questions might be whether is it open to all genres? Can DJs or producers apply, that sort of thing? Is it quite a wide open fund?
Because we actually at PPL Foundation, we've got specific funding which is more suitable for I guess a songwriter who isn't audience facing and so on and so forth. There has to be, I guess, some sort of assessment of which fund is the best for you in regards to the PPL Momentum Accelerator, because it will be highly competitive because of the amount of applicants that we can fund. But it is open to all commercial music genres, and from that perspective, and it's more for the makers of music as opposed to let's say DJs.
Yeah, so DJ, maybe if you're a creator in a DJ sense, but not necessarily somebody that would mix other people's music, and that's sort of bit more of the definition, I suppose. And obviously some of the artists that have been through, so you've had this based in Liverpool as well before, that's right, isn't it? And now this is for Yorkshire. So I think the three artists that were on the last one were Harkin, Simeon Walker and English Teacher, who are all brilliant artists, and we've had connection with them with Launchpad, particularly working with English Teacher and Simeon Walker as well. So for people listening, it's probably worth checking out them as artists and looking at kind of what they're doing and where they're at, that sort of thing. I think looking at other artists can be really helpful. We're actually going to talk to Lily, possibly some of the others from English Teacher next Wednesday as well, to get an artist's perspective on this. I think that could be really, really helpful. And maybe a little bit more about like kind of nuts and bolts stuff, like how do you actually apply? Is it a web-based thing, written application? Like how do people go about finding out a bit more about guidance and how to actually apply?
So the guidance is we've actually been putting together some amazing content on the PRS Foundation website to kind of aid people who are having difficulty and overwhelmed by the application process. We've actually even just recently we've enabled multiple ways to apply, not just in a written sense, in ways that you can record on video and in audio as well, if that is more of your stronger capabilities. And yeah, the guidance is there. It's populated. There's a great feature which one of our colleague Elizabeth has just put on about how to kind of apply and to fill out application forms and so on and so forth. So some great tips on there as well, which I'd advise anyone to who's thinking of applying for the Momentum Accelerator to have a look at beforehand. But yeah.
And can people contact you for any advice specifically or directly in terms of that? Like if they're at a point where they're writing or they want some advice or, you know, anything like that, can you offer any sessions or phone calls or anything like that?
I mean, when we have the applicants come through and they fill out the forms, we always endeavour to provide feedback even to unsuccessful applicants if they've asked for it. Prior to that, there's my email, so my DMs and my social media is always open just for like pretty much basic queries, but a lot of the information already leading up to what is suitable or what is necessary for an applicant in the Yorkshire region for them to be to qualify for this is found on the website. Outside of that is info@prsfoundation.com. That is probably the best email for any other general queries in and around the Momentum Accelerator. Like to stress also the deadline is the 1st of March. So anyone listening, just mark that in your calendar and I guess kind of work backwards from that date and collate all the relevant information that you need to. But it's a relatively short application compared to most of the others. So it's not as daunting as it would appear.
Yeah, that's good. And it's, you know, I guess some of the helpful things maybe to mention is to try and get your application started and sort of drafted or finished to a point quite soon, because then you could ask other people to look over it, anybody, even if it's a friend or member of the family, but particularly if you know somebody that is part of music that might be able to read it through and give you help, that would be really good. There's also obviously Launchpad is here to help. So Launchpad is sort of offers the additional support to successful PPL Momentum Accelerator successful applicants in terms of some additional like advice and mentoring and that sort of thing, which is what Launchpad is doing as a program. So we're trying to tie the two things together in that way. So Launchpad is also here for advice as well. We run fortnightly drop-in advice sessions, which can be found like on our Facebook page and through other social media and things, which can be booked in advance and have a chat with either a member of Launchpad or can play with me. And we are there for that kind of advice as well. So just to open that up, and that's for anything that's not just specific to this fund, but if you want to ask about this fund or other things, then we're also there for that. And the same, we've got our email address on our website, and which is launchpad-music.com, and people can contact us through that as well if anyone's unsure. So there is support and help out there to be able to help you with your application. So it's really great that people can apply using video as well now. And did you mention audio is now a possibility?
Yeah, we've just kind of factored that into the application process as a way that we've tried to understand the complexities which come in and around applying for things like this. And there may be some aspects of or some participants who that isn't their strongest suit. So we've factored that in to kind of broaden the ease of application. But generally, compared to some of the application processes that you might find in for other funds, it's not as kind of demanding, and you just need to detail and formulate the plan, and articulate it as best as possible. And I think when you are thinking about whether or not Momentum Accelerator is right for you, you have to think of it in the sense of like a stepped process. So the next step after it would be, I guess, in essence, PPL Momentum, and your plan should, I guess, jettison you into that arena. If you feel like you're already at that space, then maybe Momentum Accelerator is not for you, and that's not a bad thing. But I guess that's just identifying how well you are doing in your music career.
Yeah,
but
and that,
so
yeah, and that's a really important thing, going back to kind of identifying, isn't it? You know, with we've got quite a helpful graphic on our Instagram page, people can look at, which we try to help identify, for people to identify themselves where they think they're at, and that includes Launchpad, help musicians do it differently, Momentum Accelerator and Momentum. So it sort of is a quite a easy to read graphic that talks about where you might be at, like at what point you might have, what sort of gigs you've done, what kind of releases you've done, what kind of like national press, or whichever stage people are at. So it's not like a catch-all thing, like you've mentioned. It's definitely like a personal understanding of where you're at in your journey or career plan. But there's some little infographics there that might be helpful for people to help identify that, because, you know, there's with PRS Foundation funds, is there only a certain amount of times you can apply for this fund, or go for overall apply to different funds throughout the year, or anything like that? Are there any restrictions for people how many times they can apply?
So in regards to the PPL Momentum Fund, and I stress that when I reference PPL Momentum, I'm talking about the fund which is up to 15K, not the up to 5K regional fund of Momentum Accelerator. If you do go in for PPL Momentum and you're successful, the only other fund that you can apply for would be International Showcase Fund. So timing is very crucial. The way you, I guess, position the PRS Foundation and the fund in your overall artistry is very important as well. But there's a maximum of 3 applications across all schemes per year. And I mean, even from a Yorkshire perspective, we've had people such as Avalanche Party and Hawkeyes, who are from the Yorkshire region, who've been very successful in the PPL Momentum scheme. So yeah, I think it's, again, just identifying where you're at, and then understand also that the purpose of the fund that you're applying for, of what it's supposed to do, I guess it's supposed to push you into a place of autonomy within your career. And but if you, I guess, come at it too early, then you may not have built up that necessary, I guess, excuse the pun, speed in your acceleration to kind of propel you.
Yeah, and I guess there's that idea of with a lot of the funds of a tipping point. It's like why is now the right time for you to apply for this specific fund? And it's like thinking about why that's really relevant, and why it's sort of propelling you into the next stage of a career or career plan, so that it's not a continuation perhaps of something that you're already doing. It's maybe, or it could be a continuation of the project you're already doing, but it's accelerating you to that next level. So I think that is important to identify. And I think clarifying how many times you can apply is a really important thing, because actually, with there being lots of different funds and trying to identify which one's right for you, it can be very easy to think I'll just apply for them all, or I don't know which one to apply for them. And also perhaps saying that obviously we've talked about the next deadline is the 1st of March. Do we know yet whether there will be more rounds of this, or are there other funds that will be later on in the year? If people don't yet feel like right now is the time to be pulling this together, could they be thinking about this for further down the line this year, something like that?
I mean, specifically for musicians from the Yorkshire region, PPL Momentum Accelerator this is the round that is currently happening. We can't confirm yet whether or not there is going to be more rounds, but we are kind of understanding of the regional kind of difficulties. So that's why this is, I guess, very important from a Yorkshire perspective. If you struggle with the positioning of your artistry in amongst everyone else up and down the UK. In regards to the big PPL Momentum, which is upwards of 15 grand, the fund, there's 4 rounds of funding for that over the calendar year.
Yeah, I think that's really useful to know for people, because I think, there's a lot of talk about your plan, and I think that's something that when we've had other conversations or around different funds, or we did when we did the panel discussion about this fund, which can be found on the Launchpad and Music Leads Facebook pages actually. So that sort of goes into more about this fund and some questions from people, which we might have missed some things here. So definitely watch both things back. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of talk about a plan and how important that is. And it feels like that's the thing to do, is to realize who you are and what your plan is, and then apply it to the right fund.
Yeah.
Can you give any advice over kind of pulling together that plan? Not obviously specifically because it's a very personal thing, but just in terms of how you connect a plan with a funding application. Is there anything you might be able to advise with that?
Yeah, I think it has to also have an understanding of where your direction is musically, and what you consider your anchor points. I mean, for different music scenes, it might be a venue that you've played at. It might be a DJ who has regularly championed your music. When you begin to kind of consecutively list those points, then you can, I guess, on a list of 10, if you're hitting maybe 6 of those 10, you might feel like you're in that space to go for funding. When you look at the guidance on our website, so we've got guidance looking at multiple applications and so on and so forth, and what that entitles you to go in for at any one space and time. You might position yourself and say, okay, maybe open fund is better suited to me, which is funding for all career levels. And we've also got a fund called Women Make Music, which is, again, money ring fenced for women specifically for all career levels. And you might find that might be a better solution at that stage in your career. But again, I think it's very much having an understanding of the musician and the musicianship as a career, and where you're taking it to, as opposed to Momentum Accelerator completing your objectives. It has to be the I guess, almost at the early stages of this wonderful story that PRS is going to be a part of and can witness. That's where we hope Momentum Accelerator can help, especially Yorkshire musicians kind of deal with.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it, actually, that it's part of the story. And yeah, figuring out where in your story you are, and pulling that together, which I think is a really nice way to put it. That's all really, really helpful. And I suppose, so there's ways you need to actually evidence what you've been doing, like how we've just been talking about. It might be listing things like a specific venue or a headline show that you've done, or radio play and that sort of thing. And are there other things that you need to do? Do you need to include examples of music or references, like those kind of things?
Yeah, so we'll look for your music catalog, your music highlights rather. Sorry. I mean, we won't put too much kind of attention on things like streaming numbers and so on and so forth, but you have to kind of articulate what you perceive to be your highlights, and don't feel in any way intimidated that, oh, it may not be important, or so on and so forth. Include that, because that is part of something that you are proud of, and which makes your achievements much more impactful. So whatever you believe to be an impactful moment in your career, articulate that, detail that, put that into the application form. We will do our part to have the relevant and the appropriate, I guess, knowledge base from our end to kind of understand the space musically that you're coming from across different genres in the Yorkshire space. So it's not, don't feel compelled to match this homogenous metric, which some musicians kind of get, I guess, bogged down by. Understand your universe, your world, articulate that within your plan, and just detail that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing to say, is like detailing that. And it can be very easy, obviously, as artists to compare yourself to others and think, oh, well, I haven't done that, so maybe it's not as important that I've been on BBC Introducing West Yorkshire, but I haven't been on BBC Radio 1 yet, and things like that. But actually detailing those things, it really shows to the assessor where exactly you're at and what you're doing and what's happened, and showing that is better than saying I've had some radio play, for example.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that's really important to say. And what was the other thing was whether you needed any kind of referee or some like external kind of input into your application.
I mean, it's more about I guess, your detailing your personal. I'm trying to call me detailing your personal achievement. I should have let them know. So detailing your personal achievements, and in regards to, again, those anchor points. So the referees per se, they won't pay that much of an importance in regards to your application doing as well. So don't feel compelled or bogged down that you don't have that industry heavyweight who can advocate for you in the application form. Again, there are some I guess musicians who believe they're on a lower strata, but they're actually not, because they're doing fantastically well, but because they don't have the industry connections, which is why we've actually created this fund, to understand those nuances, that if you feel disconnected from the mainstream music industry, if you feel sometimes it might feel ostracized from the mainstream commercial music industry, this is money ring fence. This is a fund which understands those subtleties and is approaching it from that lens as well. So I think that's what I'm trying to kind of get, a real diverse and real breadth within the applications. If applicants can understand that, hey, maybe this was always right for me, or this is right for me, but I've been too, I guess, intimidated by my own understanding of what the music industry wants from me per se. So
yeah, exactly. And also how funding is now being a little bit more like visible for commercial artists as well, because it's not necessarily something that artists think about as part of, it traditionally might not think that funding is something that's going to help you, that it might be that it's that label or it's that industry support or whatever it is, but funding is also there. And again, it's not just the money, it's some of the advice, it's the mentoring and that sort of thing that can go along with it. So I'll try to wrap it up, but there's someone that's just said, is Momentum Accelerator only for Yorkshire-based artists? And it is, yes, this one. I believe, like we said, there is a round for Liverpool, but that's like a separate round. So
Yeah.
this specific round that is the deadline on the 1st of March is for Yorkshire-based artists and bands, for up to £5,000 in grants.
We did have a round once in 2019 that was specifically the same situation, ring fence for Liverpool musicians. That isn't currently running at the moment, but just with this Momentum Accelerator is specifically for people, musicians, sorry, within the Yorkshire region.
Yeah, great. And someone's just asked, is there a timeline for when successful acts might be notified? It's probably worth answering that question because, again, it helps make your plan and your timeline, because you don't want to be including things that have already happened. So yeah. I guess if there's a time frame of when people might be notified in order to kind of start this part of the project.
So I believe we, gosh, my memory serves me correct. I think we tend to notify, I think it's about 4 weeks from deadline. Yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. But I mean, in any case, if my DMs are always open, and we've got info@PRS Foundation, and that question can be fired at me again when I've got the literature in front of me to kind of double check on that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. If you could, yeah, and that's something that, again, I'm sure people can check, like you said, by emailing or checking on the website, because you need to make sure things like live links are available for that amount of time, and that it feeds into your plan and that sort of thing.
But it's normally between 4 to 8 weeks if that applicant is kind of working from that point onwards and including whatever sort of anchor points that have happened in their career. Leading up to that point, so it's roughly around that time.
Okay, great. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we might want to cover, or if there's anything else you want to particularly say before we leave it.
No, I mean, good luck. I mean, we want to see a lot more musicians in the Yorkshire region understanding that there is this amazing opportunity for them, and just give it a shot. Just articulate to the best of your ability your amazing achievements in music, and just get them into us. Yeah,
brilliant. That's really exciting. And also to really encourage people from marginalised backgrounds and genders and everything to, you know, people that are working in music that are marginalised to apply for things like this as well. It's really important to have your voices and work in the mix and in the music stratosphere. So really exciting, and we're really happy to be a part of it as well. So the website is prsfoundation.com, and ours is launchpad-music.com, and there are contact details on there as well, or you can drop messages on social media as well, and somebody will pick it up as soon as they can.
And the deadline's 1st of March.
1st of March deadline, so yeah, get cracking. But thanks very much for chatting to us.
No, thank you very much.
Brilliant, that's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.